Hello, and welcome to this edition of CIBER Focus. I'm Sara Reeves, and with me today is Blas Gonzalez, managing partner with Atreo Pharmaceuticals, and he is on campus here today to attend the first Kelley Latin American Conference. We appreciate you joining us in the studio today.
Thank you for having me, Sara. It's always a pleasure to come back to Bloomington.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad that you like to come to Bloomington. Too bad it's so rainy here today.
I know.
It's usually beautiful in the fall.
It is. I was looking at the leaves.
So your company is actually relatively young. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how it was formed.
Yeah, Atreo was started in 2010 for one of the three managing partners that are part of the company. And basically the thinking behind the company was to represent foreign companies that want to enter the Mexican market with cosmeceutical products that they don't have structure, and we can be the partner of choice for distribution and marketing of the products in Mexico.
Okay. I was reading up, and I think that the partners are from a variety of different places, not just from Mexico. Why did you decide on Mexico as the place to start?
I first came to Mexico as an expat with Johnson & Johnson, company I worked for over 25 years. And I, at one point in time, decided, well, I had to do a change. And the idea was that Mexico is a great market. It's one of the biggest markets in Latin America. It's actually the second largest market in Latin America.
Yeah.
And there are great opportunities there. It's a market that even though people consider an emerging market, which is an emerging market, the characteristics, because of the proximity to the States, give you a different approach in which it is, has been stable for a number of years. The big crises I used to hear in the past in Mexico, they're not that big anymore, so it tends to have a slow but safe growth in most categories.
And you're saying that your company is an opportunity for other firms to enter the market in Mexico. Right. Is that a challenge? Is it helpful to have you there so that they're not trying to do it on their own?
Well, in the particular market where we compete in, there's a few international companies that dominate the market. I mean, usually French companies. They're very good on marketing and developing and marketing cosmeceuticals. There's a lot of upstarts and small companies from many parts of the world that they would like to move in an important market such as Mexico. But the fact is, the barriers of entry sometimes can get to be very big. I mean, these are products that have to be targeted to doctors. You have to do detailing. You have to talk about the scientific properties of the product, and then you have to distribute that either directly to doctors or through specialized pharmacies. So it's for someone who comes from outside, it is very difficult to do that because it's a very specific model and very specific distribution.
And a lot of your products are kind of based around beauty-related things.
Right.
And I know that generally we think that ideals of beauty can vary from country to country. So is there an issue related to marketing products in different environments when beauty is the thing that you might be working with?
Well, we talk about beauty products, but they're beauty with therapeutic qualities. So perhaps your mix of products can vary from market to market, depending on the needs, not only beauty, but also on the conditions. Like say, for example, the countries in which the skin and the preference of people have a lighter skin or brightened skin, and in some other countries they want to have more like toned skin or like this suntan look. So you adjust your portfolio based on that. But when you talk about therapeutic needs like acne or you talk about dermatitis and other conditions, that can happen in any market. It shouldn't be any different.
So you're marketing mostly to the doctors and not to the direct customer at the end when you're working on marketing your products?
I would say at first you have to go through doctors. We want to drive recommendation. We want to drive prescription, and then you can move on the brand into a more massive approach, but you need to have that professional backing before you start moving. These are high ticket products for the most part. So even if you can invest in advertising, if you're trying to compete with more massive products, you're at a real disadvantage. So you need to you have to build a loyal following. You need to build an equity as a professional product before you even attempt to move into the mass consumer.
And is working in the medical field and more different from country to country? So are these companies coming in, let's say from France, do they find trying to interact with the medical professionals in Mexico different than what they were doing in France?
There could be some difference, but as a matter of fact, you're talking about big multinational corporations, as you might have heard. I mean, there's a lot of laws or restrictions that companies have regarding compliance to the way they do business, the way they relate to doctors, and that can happen in any market. I mean, if you're a big multinational, like I said, I'm working for J&J, compliance does not know boundaries. I mean, it has to be the same everywhere. So us coming, the partners coming from multinationals, we understand that. I mean, we understand how the rules are, and we share that sense. I mean, we need to have good relations with doctors, but it has to be done properly.
Before you opened your company, did you have experience working in Mexico?
I worked for 3 years on J&J before joining Atreo.
Okay.
So I was already exposed to the market, and prior to that, I had regional responsibility. I was marketing research director for J&J, even though I was based in Caracas, was pretty much living on a plane, going up and down the region, and I had a lot of exposure to the Mexican market even prior of moving to Mexico.
How important was that experience in launching a new venture?
It was very important because I guess having the opportunity of experience situations in different markets, understanding the nuances of the consumer in different markets, understanding the categories. Because one way or another, I worked with these categories not only in Venezuela, but I worked with them in Central America on a direct basis and more indirect on the market research side. And even though there are a lot of commonalities, sometimes you have to understand their difference, and you have to adjust to it.
Interesting. When you were saying that there are a lot of commonalities, what are the sort of things that you're seeing that are similar across the markets in the Central or Latin America region?
Well, one of the things that I remember back the time I was in market research, you don't have a big budget. So I said, well, the best way to do is that you want to research something, you research that in every country. Yeah. And then you get a pattern and trying to understand that. So what you do, you start clustering in the sense that, okay, you know that for this category or this brand or whatever that you're researching, you can put together these countries and these countries and these countries. Now, that's not going to be the same for all cases or all brands. So you have to start to understand that because, and that is based on your experience. So if you already have a history of investigation, that you can say, okay, well, let's group them, and then we don't do them in all countries, you do in one. Yeah. And then you take that learning and apply for that cluster. It is more efficient that way. So as far as trying to find something that is common for every country, it's not that easy. Yeah. Even the language is a problem. Yeah. By that I mean that you can have even we're talking about Spanish-speaking countries. There can be situations in which, even though the pronunciation can be changing, it's not an accent matter. It's sometimes are grammar differences. So there are times in which you have to understand that the communication, or even the text on the packaging, may vary when you talk, let's say, Mexico and Argentina, perhaps taking the two extremes. But that gives you an example that you have to find a common ground sometimes that it can work in every market. Sometimes it cannot be achieved, but sometimes it can.
Are there things where it's just not possible that you're definitely going to have to make small changes for each market? There's just no way you can do something across the board.
Well, regarding packaging in the product, I think you can for the most part you can get common on the text, not the regulatory, because that's beyond like say the communication part. Now you do have sometimes to do adjustments in the copy and the advertising copy, because perhaps some words that in one market works fine, in the other markets it will just kind of give you the look because you're saying something that is totally inappropriate. So I mean that's something that you have to look at situation and have the local marketing or the advertising agency look at it, because it can make a big difference just making a small adjustment without losing the main idea.
If I was a company in the United States and I was interested in getting started in, let's say, the Mexican market, what kind of advice would you have for me?
Well, it depends a lot in what type of business or what kind of activity you want to do in the market.
Yeah.
But one of the big things is that it's if you want to let's say, for example, export product from the U.S. to Mexico. So if you don't have a structure and you have to build a structure, most of the time what you will benefit to find a local partner, which is basically the model what we offering. Yeah. To to get started. Either you're doing joint venture or just something, just give a distributorship. But the point is that you need to have someone locally who understands the local market, the local regulations, the local fiscal implications, because even though people will look at it, well, it's Latin America, it's a region, there are stark differences between countries. So you have to understand that in each case, you may have to operate in a different manner. And that's perhaps one of the biggest challenges. I mean, there are many available tools. For example, for U.S. companies, the American Chamber of Commerce that operates in every market, they're very proactive in trying to get companies to do business in their country. So if you want to move into a particular market, that's a starting point.
Excellent advice. The Chamber of Commerce is a good point. You were kind of so you were talking about having a local partner, someone who's already in the market, and you're serving that role for these international companies. What sort of challenges do you face when you're dealing with customers who are from a variety of different places? So you're bringing in outside from many different countries, and then you're the basis that they have in Mexico.
Well, I think one of the strong points is that let's start with what we can offer. We can offer strong relationship with the customers. So basically, what we need to find is something that has to be a win-win. So we need to have we need to find partners that are willing to give us the guidance, give us the right products for the market, have the right cost, because that's another tough matter, because if you don't have cost to be able to compete, there's not much you can do about it, and also that can vary from market to market, because our experience in Mexico is that there are many international companies trying to move into Mexico selling finished goods, and even though you may not have barriers of entry regarding import duties, the fact is that because of the local cost structure of domestic companies, in some categories, it's very hard to compete with imported product. So, and we have encountered the situation a number of times. There are companies, for example, from Brazil and Colombia. They're very eager to enter the Mexican market, but because of the currency in those countries have appreciated in the past few years, it is very complicated, because to have the right cost to compete in the local market. So we have had already to turn down very interesting product proposals because just basically were not cost competitive for us.
Interesting. And that's the sort of thing that it wouldn't necessarily occur to me right off the bat, that there's pricing issues related to currency fluctuations.
Actually, importing from the U.S. it's a better proposal for many companies, because you have NAFTA, so you can bring products from the U.S. with no duties for the most part, and then there might be some issues. There used to be a problem now that it was halfway solved with the trucking industry. That wouldn't. I mean, U.S. Trucks they were blocking the transportation because they wouldn't allow Mexican trucks to go into the U.S. And that's something that has been discussed on the congressional level. I don't have the latest information, but it was a big issue between Mexico and the U.S. because even though you have NAFTA, a Mexican truck driver could not drive in the U.S. They were blocking that.
I would just assume that NAFTA would have allowed that to happen.
Yeah,
so
but at the time they were just doing transfer. And like I said, don't quote me on the details of that, because it's a. I know that there have been changes. They were easing that, and but that was a minor situation. But still, there's a lot of there are good logistics operators in the border. Like you have like Laredo and Nuevo Laredo, the side of Mexico, that they already used to do this transfer. So you take a truck to the border, and then just a second truck will go into it.
They have it down pat by now.
Oh, they do. I mean, that's another good point. I mean, you go into the market. For example, in the case of Mexico and in Central America too, there are great logistics operators that used to manage this. So even though you don't have an infrastructure, they will have it for you.
Oh, well, that makes it much easier, especially for a smaller company that's considering something like this.
Yeah, what we do is, I mean, if you look at our company, as far as payroll, we're a very small company because most of our service is outsourced. We outsource human resources, we outsource our accounting, we outsource our customer service and logistics. So basically, we're dedicated to marketing and sales, just a strategic part of it, the commercial part.
You're just a core force there that's doing what you're focused on. Excellent. Yes. That's very interesting. I almost want to explore that a little bit. So where are you outsourcing to?
Well, basically, they are local companies. We have, for example, our accounting and tax advice is a company that it was put together actually from people who came from the pharma industry. And they built this business model of providing advice to other small companies, startup, and so it worked out very well because they have the knowledge. They pretty much, we can speak the same language because we were in the same business.
Nice.
That helps out. Our logistics is it's a company who's actually a pharma distributor, has a side business as a logistics operator. So our facilities are pharma grade in the sense that even though today our products are marketed as pharmaceuticals, but they have cosmetic registration. But we already are planning to expanding our portfolio and have pharma products as part of our portfolio, and we're ready for that.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
they can provide a service just like a pharma, and they take care of all our picking, packing, and the invoicing. So we don't have to mind that.
Nice.
And all the payroll is also a third party. It's a local third party that manages a few thousand people for a number of companies. So we can benefit because they can get mass negotiations with insurance companies and other providers. That is part of the benefits we can offer to employees.
Well, it sounds like you guys are quite sleek operating system.
We try to do our best because cost constraints are very important.
Yeah.
We're capital starved, so you're trying to do the best with what we have.
I want to switch gears a little and learn more about how it is that you got to be in the position that you're currently in. Can you talk a little bit about your career path and how you got to where you are now?
Okay. My educational formation, I started, my undergrad is in electrical engineering. I got a BS degree from University of Illinois, Urbana. And at the time, Kelley was still Indiana University School of Business. The student population was half straight from undergrad and half with work experience. I was part of that half with no. So I came straight from undergrad to IU.
How did you make that decision to go from engineering to get a business degree?
Well, while I was studying engineering, I sort of started getting a sense that I liked the commercial side. So even though I liked the technical aspect of my education in electrical engineering, I started getting that interest that I wanted to go into commercial side. So I found that I wanted to combine already from the beginning the technical expertise from engineering and the business experience I got here at Kelley.
So it's just interesting because we've done several interviews today and everyone has an engineering background. So I'm wondering if it's a requirement, engineering, then MBA.
Well, I made a comment at the session earlier today. I think one of the benefits of combining an MBA with an engineering has to do with that. The fact is that they call what they call the scientific method is that general understanding you gain as an engineer. You're trying to find exact solution to a problem. You're trained to do that. That's part of what you do in engineering. So when you go to the business world, even though you have a lot of understanding on the finance and accounting, which can be straightforward, sometimes there's not an exact solution to a problem, especially marketing. I mean, marketing could be the other extreme. And so what you find is you have that training for being that scientific method, trying to find the exact solution to a problem, and then you have marketing. So when you combine both, and you have a person who can have that well-rounded knowledge, we have great benefits. I made the comment earlier today that at one point in time, while I was a marketing director in Venezuela, it was funny because I looked at my structure and I said, wait, I didn't decide this, but I had 4 direct reports, and myself, the 5 of them we were engineers. So I didn't think of it. It just happened that way.
Yeah, interesting.
And they were all great professionals.
Very interesting. Do you ever feel any sort of conflict between that engineering end of you that wants to find that one solution and then the other business end of you who, especially in the marketing world, knows that maybe there isn't that one perfect solution?
I would say the only struggle I always had with myself is a sense of urgency. Because when you're trying to find a exact solution to a problem, it can be time consuming. So sometimes you have to compromise even yourself that, okay, how willing are you are, okay, am I willing to go like 95% right, 92% right? So I would say that it's something you have to learn to manage because it is true. And actually that has been a feedback I've gotten in the past that I try to be so precise that I will take too long in making a decision. So I would say that would be the biggest roadblock, if you want to call it that way.
Not necessarily a roadblock, though, because it's definitely a valuable.
It is valuable. You get a well-rounded knowledge when you combine a science background with a business background. I mean, that's a great benefit, even though you don't work afterwards necessarily on a science-based activity, but that apply common sense that you can get out of a combination of a science and a business education is invaluable.
Well, what sort of advice do you have for students who are currently business undergraduates who aren't going to have that science background? Is there something that they can do to gain those skills?
Well, as I was mentioning a few minutes ago, one of the things that's changed a lot here at Kelley and other great business schools in the nation is that they require a level of business experience before going to the MBA school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in retrospective, I understand that. I came straight from undergrad and it was a difference because I didn't have the business experience. Because in school, you can get a lot of academic knowledge and you can get some hands-on experience, whether you got an internship or you got a project or any other opportunity you have to expose to the real world workings. But if you already have some working experience and you come back to school and say, oh, okay, I lived through this. Let me provide my insight on this, or let me build upon what is being discussed. So I think that combination is great. So if an undergrad has a background that not necessarily come from business, I think if they come to the business school, what they have to do is that, okay, what did I learn here that I can apply what I'm doing here?
Mm-hmm.
So how can I really synergize what I'm doing with my knowledge that in the business?
Excellent. That's I think some pretty good advice. What have I not asked you about that you think would be of interest to our audience?
One of the biggest challenges is that you can see in the news all the time is that companies go through restructurings.
Mm-hmm.
So you get people that they have sudden career changes because circumstances that are outside of the reach.
Mm-hmm.
So you can either stick to what you're doing and trying to find a position in another company, or trying to do a total change of pace. But what you have to do is that you have to understand that you don't have to, or try not to specialize too much in a particular area. Try to get to learn a broad knowledge that you can even apply on any part of your professional career or your personal life.
Mm-hmm.
And that, with your experience, you can pick it up along the way. And I think that's important. I mean, companies have been forced to do changes, perhaps always have happened, but I think you can see more frequently that even though big companies, all of a sudden they say, well, a few thousand people got laid off because they're changing. And the evolution is forcing them to do so.
So we should all be more Renaissance men and have a wide range of experience and interests.
That's the way I try to think of myself. I'm not get to be a Renaissance man. I love the definition. I want to take you up on that. But yes, I think as long as you have a well-rounded, not only an education, but you are open-minded to look into different things, to understand. You don't have to accept it or you don't have to adopt it, but you have to be open-minded to look at it, understand it, say, okay, I don't follow your preference or your thinking, but I understand what you're doing and I respect it. So it is good. I think like I said, a well-rounded formation and an open mind it will take you very far.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today, and enjoy the rest of the time with the conference. And hopefully it'll stop raining and you can get out and enjoy a little bit of Bloomington as well.
Leaves.
Yeah, it's the time for that.
That's right.
All right.
Thank you so much, Sara.
Thank you. That's it for this edition of CIBER Focus. If you have any comments or suggestions for future topics, you can reach us at ciber@indiana.edu. Thank you.